All right, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. We got another great one today. My name's Shane.
I'm Carrie.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's get this show started.
All right, well, welcome to another episode. This is going to be another review episode. This one is for a book called Cold Sky by a company called Black Relic Comics. This is my first time reading anything from Black Relic. This is like a team book. So there's a few characters that you're going to have to get to know throughout the story. I've got some thoughts, but yeah, let's. What do you guys
I'll
think,
start
Carrie?
off.
Go ahead,
I'll
Carrie.
start
All
off.
right.
Okay.
All right.
So, while the story itself is a little jumbled, as far as like they start the comic itself contains like three separate stories within it, except there's no like, oh, we're stopping. Here's this is this person or this crew's story. Here's another person's story. Here's another person's story. I do think that there's some way that they all tie together, but it's not made real clear in this first issue. However, if you take each individual piece like as its own, there are some commonalities between them. The first one is really about a crew, and for me, I liken it to like the Falcon, like it was Han Solo's crew. Like they're doing jobs for people they really don't love doing jobs for, but they need to have money to pay for gas and all the other things. And so, very similar to like Bad Batch, Falcon crew kind of thing. And there's even some hints to like, I don't know. I likened it to Alien because there's a humanoid robot kind of creature as part of the crew, and he sort of plays like a bishop type character but doesn't go crazy killing everybody. So I enjoyed the first section.
Spoiler alert, by the way.
Spoiler alert.
It's not a spoiler alert. There's a character who's an android.
No, I'm
Humanoid.
talking about for aliens, those that haven't seen Aliens yet.
Yeah, sorry.
Joke.
Didn't mean to
40
too
years
soon.
later.
You're 40 years is come on. We got to wait
Too
for
soon.
you got to
I'm
wait for
sorry.
50
Okay.
years before we spoil it.
That's right.
You guys could have told
Sorry.
me beforehand.
And the shark is the bad guy in Jaws. In case anybody.
No. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Shane, how dare you?
You
Yeah,
guys are ruining classics.
he's very angry.
And I also saw like some tie-ins to like Firefly. Like again, the same like a little motley crew that works together to accomplish money. Like they just want to get money.
Yep.
So there, like that's one part. The second part, I don't know if any of you have ever seen The Wizard of Oz Part 2.
Yeah, one time. I need to rewatch that actually because I know it was a little weird when I watched it when I was a kid, but yeah.
A little weird. It's very weird.
It's very weird.
It's a different. It's one that'll give you nightmares.
Yes.
So you know.
Yeah.
If you're a kid, as an adult, I hope not. But it's very different from the original Wizard of Oz. But there's an evil queen in I think she's a queen in part 2 that the second part of this comic very much reminds me of, as far as well, you would know if you read it. I don't want to give it away. There's just a little bit of a teaser as far as that's concerned. If you know the movie, you'll have an idea of where I'm going with that, with the queen. And then the last section of the book, I'm trying to remember exactly the last section. I'd have to look again. I didn't write down any notes, but what I do want to say about it is I really like the use of color. Each section had like a color scheme to it. And so I really appreciated their use of color to kind of differentiate between the three separate stories. And I really also like their use of lines for movement. In the artwork. I thought there's a space battle that occurs, and I really thought this is really well done. I knew what was happening in each panel.
Mm-hmm.
I knew the movement. I could almost envision it and see it
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, not obviously on the page, but also obviously on the page I saw it. But it was conveyed very, very well. The artistry was done really well as far as movement is concerned. Sometimes that doesn't land, and it really landed
Mm-hmm.
well in this comic. And at the very end, there's a piece that definitely made me think of Rudy Rod from The Fifth Element.
Mm.
And so it was very out there. It was unexpected, but when you see the first panel, you're like, Ruby Rod.
I gotcha.
And
Yeah.
especially given the context of what they're sharing as a news source for space.
Mm-hmm.
So I did think that was I thought it was a neat way to end the book, as far as like, oh, here's a newscast about everything that's happening, and to actually introduce the issue that's happening in the entirety of the galaxy. So I thought it was a good book. I would like to know a little bit more. And so I would probably read another issue for sure.
Hmm.
Anyways, that's all I got.
Nice.
Shane, do you want to go?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely a little more critical of this book, just from the standpoint of maybe it's just me, but there's a lot of characters, and a lot of the names have a lot of consonants and not a lot of vowels, and so I found it hard for me to even understand what their names were sometimes, and that took me out of the story, to be honest. Um, I mean, I like what they were trying to set up. There's some history between some of the characters. There's like a new character who's on the ship with them, and so there's a bit of mystery there. There's a long history with, like Carrie, you mentioned the android and the captain of the ship. There's like a long history between them two. There's another character who kind of like an Asian character. They don't really incorporate him very much in the story. I mean, he was co-piloting, but I don't know. I didn't get as much like what's going on with his character throughout. I mean, it's a pretty fast story as far as, they talk a little bit about who they are and that they need money. They land, they've got a job to do, and then they go off into space. And then, so it's not like there's a lot going on, I guess, in this initial book. With that said, there's a kind of end piece that, for me, kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. There's like a character that gets introduced on a different planet, and I wasn't even sure really if this was like a new comic book, or if this was part of the story until you fully read into it. So yeah, so there's definitely some elements for me that pulled me in and out of the book. Yeah, I mean, definitely the artwork style I really did enjoy. And to Carrie's point, the sometimes when you're showing space battle stuff, it can get distracting if not done well. And I felt like they did do that really well. Yeah, I think there's enough there that I would be interested to see what happens in the next issue. But yeah, I mean, just from a overall, kind of critique, that's kind of where I landed.
Well, and I was going to kind of wait to see if you mentioned it, Shane.
Yeah.
But I did. So I kind of agree with both you and Carrie. The fact that I was going to see if you mentioned they did have kind of a page where they did try to do like some character introduction, because,
Yes.
and I'm going to focus kind of on the main, what I consider the main story, or the first story, which was the space adventure piece. To me, it felt like they're trying to introduce a lot of characters. So if you think like Star Trek, right,
Mm-hmm.
space adventure, if you try to do every character, or Guardians of the Galaxy, which I
Yes.
think this story is a little bit more like Guardians of the Galaxy with the whole money thing and
Yes.
and different types of character creation, which is fantastic. I think the characters were the art and the colors and everything that again, Carrie, I think you said it first, and Shane kind of felt the same way, and as do I, as far as the action sequences and how it was laid out was really done very, very well. But also, to Shane, kind of a little bit of just slight critiquing is that some of the names and the places, because they were like really challenging as far as just trying to remember which character they were talking about, because the names were kind of wow, like they were kind of tough to follow for me. So that was a little distracting from the story, but the layouts, the color, the artistry behind it was really done very, very well, in my opinion. But yeah, I kind of got a little bit of the Carrie. You were talking about some of those, what it reminded you of, which was fantastic. I didn't even think about that Aliens tie-in. But yeah, for me, it was kind of like, ooh, it's like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's just, again, it can be very challenging to like if you introduced every one of the Guardians of the Galaxy and kind of what their relationships are, like that takes obviously some time to establish that. So as a first issue, I think you're off to a good start. I also would pick up a couple more issues just to kind of see how, what's happening, and see if it can kind of hook me in a little bit as some of these characters as they evolve and things. So very well done. As far as the other stories in the book, I wasn't quite as focused on those for just me personally. I just resonated towards that first story.
Yeah, I mean, I this is what I love, having these conversations and talking about these books, because it's always interesting to hear thoughts on where the artist may have pulled inspiration from. And to Carrie's point, I thought that was really brilliant. The Fifth Element, the thing at the end, as far as there's a character who's like an on-camera personality. Yeah, I totally can see that now that you mention it. And yeah, the android on the ship, that's absolutely right from Alien and Aliens, because they both had an alien or an android.
They did have an alien, though. It's true.
Yeah, they both had both, actually.
Well, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And to your point, Mike, yeah, I agree with you. This is very kind of Guardians of the Galaxy-esque in that sense. So, I mean, if that's something that you resonate with, if you're a big fan of the Guardians films or space based stuff like that, I would say even Firefly, there's kind of an element of that in this. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth checking out. And once again, we're all able to read this on Global Comics, a great supporter of the show. So please check them out. Well worth subscribing to their platform. Any last thoughts? No, I think we covered it pretty good. All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We love bringing you new, interesting books like this that you might not have thought about reading. So please hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell, and we'll keep bringing you content like this. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.